All right, we will get started. It is right on 2 o'clock. We love a prompt start. Firstly, let me thank all of you guys so much for coming. I know that there's probably 1,001 other things you could have been doing with this beautiful Sunday afternoon, but you chose to be here, and that is absolutely awesome. Like, it makes my heart so happy to see all your beautiful faces. So thank you so much for turning up. How this presentation is going to run is we're going to have a 45-minute presentation. We're going to cover so many things. Don't worry if your brain's buzzing a little bit at the end. It's a lot of information. We will be moving quite quickly. So I wouldn't be surprised if you guys had 1,001 questions for me at the end. Because we will be moving so quickly, if you do want me to go back and kind of have up a slide again, we can do that after the presentation. We will be having a 15-minute Q&A section, which will have a wee pop quiz section in it, which does have prizes. So we will have 8 opportunities for prizes with questions. So there will be parts of the presentation where I do point out and I'm like, take a screenshot of this in your brains, because it will be in the pop quiz. After that, I'll be hanging around for about half an hour to answer any more personal questions you guys have, or give out more personal advice. But that is also an incredible opportunity for you guys to mix and mingle with each other. I know for a fact that every situation that is in this room, whatever you're struggling with, whatever your goal is, chances are that there is someone else in this room with the exact same goal, the exact same situation. So if you can meet each other and kind of start forming that community, that's an amazing opportunity, and definitely seize it today. So, starting straight off the bat, who am I and why should you listen to me? My name's Amber, as you guys know. I'm a registered sports nutritionist, health coach, and performance nutritionist. I was raised in the Bay of Islands up in Kerikeri. Once I graduated high school, I came down south and did a Bachelor of Sport and Exercise Science and a Master's in Health Science. After I graduated that, I went out into the big wide world thinking I knew everything, or I knew stuff. Maybe, hopefully. I was humbled so quickly. Like, I didn't know much about nutrition at all, and as we probably all know, nutrition makes up for between 40 and 70% of someone moving towards their health and fitness goals. So it's a massive aspect, and it was a massive gap in my knowledge. So I went and did 3 years of the nutrition qualifications, came out of that and realized that there is a massive gap in the industry for just specialists that offer exercise, nutrition, and body composition analysis, looking at them as one kind of unit, because they should be looked at like that. And so that's where the sports nutritionist was born from. We offer nutrition programs, exercise programs, and not to brag, but the most comprehensive body composition analysis available anywhere in New Zealand and Australia, which if you did grab a wee yellow pamphlet with the Snap Fitness logo at the top, that's kind of talking about what we offer tomorrow and Tuesday at Snap. I will go in a little bit more depth at the end of the presentation, so don't worry about that. Is nutrition a problem in New Zealand? Short answer, yes. Currently, New Zealanders are under-eating in macronutrients and micronutrients. Why is this? Firstly, a crisis in our economy. It sucks, it's expensive. Like, broccoli can be $3 a head in the wrong season. So it's really hard to buy the good food, the best food at the moment. And it also comes down to education, because when your budget isn't as large as it used to be and you can't afford that awesome food, like, where do you start, So education is where I come in. And so a massive pillar of the sports nutritionist is making nutritional advice accessible and affordable to the general public. That's why once a month we're going to be running these talks. If I can change one person's perspective on nutrition when they came in here, if I can change it and they walk out in a different perspective, that is a job well done for me. Like, that would make my heart so happy. So if at the end of the talk I have taught you something, or if I've changed the way you see food maybe, please do tell me, because that would just make my day. So what we're going to be talking about today is macronutrients, what they are, where you find them, why they're important, the same for micronutrients, and then we're going to have a small section on hydration, because it is often a very overlooked but essential part of daily health. And then basically all that information is going to be crammed into 6 practical tips that you guys can walk away with and implement this evening if you felt so inclined to do so. So macronutrients. First one, everything that you eat contains or is mainly composed of one of three macronutrients. So the first one is carbohydrates. The main bodily function of carbohydrates is to fuel the body. There is protein. The main bodily function of protein is to aid the structure of the body. So it builds enzymes, it builds cells, like it builds tissues. That's its role within the body. And then there is lastly fat, which is structure and fuel. Now I want you guys to take a mental screenshot of this slide because it will be in the pop quiz. All right, so starting with carbohydrates. Basically, the umbrella term of carbohydrates is split down further into two general classes. We've got simple and complex. Now, just like most things, it's a sliding scale. So not everything is complex or simple. There's very much a range. So when we look at fruit, for example, it's very high in fructose, but it also contains fiber. So it's kind of simple, but kind of complex at the same time. We'll go more in depth. What do? They are fuel, they control blood glucose and insulin metabolism, they have a massive relationship with cholesterol and triglycerides, and also fiber plays a significant role in your gut health and your gastrointestinal tract. So as I mentioned, simple is sugar and complex is starch and fiber. All right, so looking a little bit further into the simple carbohydrates, they are the smaller molecules which are quickly absorbed. They have a significant impact on your glucose and insulin metabolism, and they are a super quick form of fuel. That's their entire role, is a really quick form of fuel. You can find them in natural sources and processed sources. The natural sources also contain micronutrients, so keep that in mind. So with the sports nutritionist, one of our foundational focuses, I suppose, is moving the perspective from, oh, this is good food, this is bad food, and instead, oh, this food is comprised of these macronutrients and these are its goals. So with simple carbohydrates, the natural sources contain micronutrients as well, but then the processed forms often don't. They are used in high intensity, short duration exercise. That is what they do within the body. So for example, if I was to bolt out of this room and sprint for 45 seconds, my body would be using carbohydrates. When we eat carbohydrates, it goes into our small intestines and gets converted into glucose, which then goes into our blood. With simple carbohydrates, because they are smaller molecules and they get digested very quickly, it means that they enter the bloodstream as glucose very quickly. That's something to keep in mind. With complex carbohydrates, on the other hand, they are larger molecules. So they are digested far more slowly and they have a far less significant impact on the blood glucose and blood insulin levels. They are found in whole foods such as grains, legumes, beans, and vegetables, and also processed foods such as white flour and white rice. Now the debate as to whether white rice is bad for you and brown rice is good for you, literally the only difference, they're the same grain, but the only difference is that brown rice has still got the husk of the grain on it, whereas white rice has had that husk removed. That is the only difference. So brown rice is digested a little bit slower and has a little less impact on the blood glucose. That's the only difference because of its fiber. So as we mentioned before, fiber is really important for the gut microbiome and the digestive tract due to its fermentation process, and it's also because it's digested really slowly and is made up of larger molecules, it means that the energy that it releases into your blood in the form of glucose is a lot slower. All right, so when we're talking about glucose and insulin, I know that we have a general idea. We're like, oh yeah, glucose when it's high, that's a bad thing. Insulin has something to do with that, maybe, I don't know. So explaining that relationship a little bit better, when you have simple carbohydrates, let's say you had a really hard day and you got home and had half a cake, which is totally fine. Sometimes we need to have half a cake sometimes. All right, so let's say that you did that. Can you guys see the screen all right? Yep. All right, so you did that. The carbohydrates which are in that cake, so let's see the cake, and it is a very simple carbohydrate processed form of food, right? So you had that half a cake, it digested all those slow molecules really quickly, flooded your blood with glucose, and your body goes, "Wow, we have so much glucose floating around in our blood, we should release a bunch of insulin to get rid of that glucose," because basically the role of insulin is to see the molecules of glucose floating around, buddy up with it, drag it off to a cell, and we're gonna see insulin as the guy with the key. So they get to the cell, the insulin gets the key out, opens the door of the cell, shoves glucose in, and slams the door. That's basically the entire role of insulin, is to clear glucose from the blood. However, when our blood is very saturated with glucose, such as when we have half a cake, we get to this point, our body releases a bunch of insulin and takes it all the way down. So when we're going up, this is when we feel amazing, we're on that sugar high, we're feeling great. Our body releases a bunch of insulin. Give me a second. Okay. Don't touch the screen, listen to that. Body releases a bunch of insulin, puts all the glucose into the blood cells, into the body's cells. But the issue here is when our body has such an extreme reaction to extreme levels of glucose by releasing extreme levels of insulin, it takes our blood glucose below the baseline, which is here. And that's why we feel like trash. We have a headache, our eyes hurt, we have no energy, we feel a little bit sick. You know, that's what is happening inside of our bodies when we eat half a cake. So on the other hand, and that's simple carbohydrates. That happens with simple carbohydrates. When we have complex carbohydrates, on the other hand, which is, as we talked before, fibers and starches, our body digests those larger molecules slowly, right? Which means that the release of glucose into our blood is a lot slower and a lot more consistent. And so we don't put that same metabolic stress on our metabolic system, which is why there's such a negative connotation with things like diabetes. People say, oh, it's because you've put your metabolic system under stress continuously by eating trash food. That's what's caused your body to release less insulin and be less sensitive to insulin. That's not true. Like, I'm just clarifying that now, it's not true. Genetics plays a major role in insulin resistance. So just clarifying that up now. All right, so just jumping into a few myths on carbohydrates. First myth, carbohydrates bad. That's not true at all. As we talked before, complex carbohydrates are super important because they contain fiber. They contain a bunch of micronutrients as well, especially in the form of vegetables. But simple carbohydrates can put stress on the metabolic system. So if you're continuously exposing your metabolic system to the highs and lows of your glucose, that can have some impacts. Second myth, fiber is important. Science has shown that individuals with high intakes of dietary fiber are significantly at lower risk for developing heart disease, stroke, hypertension, diabetes, obesity, and certain gastrointestinal diseases. So very important. So make sure you eat your veggies. With protein is the second macronutrient that we talked about. So just recapping, carbohydrates are broken down into simple carbohydrates and complex carbohydrates, and they are fuel. Keep that in your brains. With protein is made up of a chain of amino acids. Protein does heaps in our body, so much. It's cellular support system. It takes control of biochemical catalysts. It builds cells, and most significantly, it is the initiator of cellular death. So when your body stops controlling when your cells are destined to die, that is when you're at risk of your cells mutating and becoming tumors. So protein plays a significant role there. With the amino acids that make up each protein, it is the combination of the amino acids that determine that role of that protein in the body. So when we're talking about amino acids, there are 20 of them. we don't care about 11 of them. We only care about 9 of them. 11 are non-essential, which means that we don't have to eat them. Our bodies can make them. But 9 are essential, meaning that they have to come in through our diet for us to be healthy. So when we talk about complete protein sources, we're talking about foods that contain all 9 of those essential amino acids. The age-long debate about plant products and animal products for a source of protein, literally the only difference when it comes to bioavailability is 13%, which isn't massive. For example, if I had a plant product and an animal product both contained 10 grams, I would have, of those 10 grams from the plant source, I would intake 8 grams, and from the animal source, I would intake just above 9. So not a massive difference when you look at it like that. In terms of both, there are differences. So with the animal products, they do contain less micronutrients, but they are, as we said, more bioavailable in terms of the protein. And they also do contain less fiber. But then with the plant, they contain more fiber, more micronutrients, they're cheaper, they decrease your risk of cardiovascular disease because of those fibrous properties, and they are, a bit cheaper. However, if you are someone who doesn't eat products in this room, do be in mind that vitamin B12 is only found in meat products. So if you haven't thought about your vitamin B12 levels, that is something you should go to your GP and have a chat to them about, just to make sure you're not deficient or anything. So a few myths: you don't need protein if you're physically inactive. Totally wrong. As we mentioned before, protein does 1,001 things in the body. Whether you are physically active and having to complete the process of muscular repair quite frequently, or whether you're someone who does a 9-hour office day at work and gets home and is shattered and walks like 100 steps. You both need that same baseline level of protein. The athlete would probably need a little bit more just because of those cellular repair processes that he's having to do or she's having to do, but protein is very important in just surviving. And the second myth is that cheese and peanut butter are great sources of protein. Not true. They are mainly comprised of fat. So when you see athletes putting peanut butter in their smoothies, it's because they are trying to increase their fat intake. It's got nothing to do with protein. All right, so moving on to lipids. So just recapping quite quickly: carbohydrates, simple, complex fuel. Protein are broken down into non-essential and essential amino acids, and they are structure. With fat, they are structure and fuel. They are super important for the absorption of fat-soluble vitamins. Fats build cellular walls. It's super, super important. They are also super important for hormones. So if you are having less than 30% of your daily intake from if you're having less than 30% of your daily caloric intake from fat, your hormone regulation may be impaired. And just like the other two that we talked about, it is broken down into a subclass of unsaturated and saturated. Touching on unsaturated fat, straight off the bat, it is usually seen as the good fat, which it is, because it increases your high-density lipoproteins, which is seen as the good cholesterol. Basically, high-density lipoproteins are proteins that carry cholesterol from the blood into the liver for removal, and it decreases the bad cholesterol, which is low-density lipoproteins, which carry cholesterol from the liver into the blood. So it's basically decreasing your overall levels of cholesterol. Balanced consumption lowers the risk of heart and blood vessel diseases due to regulated cholesterol markers. And as we can see on the side there, and there's beautiful pictures, those are really good examples of unsaturated fat. All right, moving on to saturated fat. Saturated fat is commonly seen as the bad fat. it basically does the opposite to unsaturated fat, where it decreases the good high density lipoproteins, which, as we talked before, they carry the cholesterol from the blood into the liver, and they increase the bad cholesterol. So basically they increase your body's susceptibility to having high cholesterol levels in the blood. With saturated fat, it includes a class of fat which is called trans fat. And I just want to clarify that trans fat a little bit is present in natural food sources such as meats and butters, but most of it, when we say trans fat, just think artificial fat. Like when I say trans fat, I'm not talking about natural sources of trans fat, I'm talking about artificial. So basically, trans fat was developed as a really good preservative and something that would be really good for high temperatures for long periods of time. So trans fat is often used in the fast food industry for deep frying. However, because it's plant oils that have been hydrogenated so that they're solid at room temperature, it means that they're really hard for our bodies to break down. And they increase the risk of cholesterol, like total body cholesterol, really, really high. And so actually in the USA it's been banned, but in New Zealand they deem it within the safe levels. So I did a little bit of research, and I don't think McDonald's uses them anymore, but that's just something to be aware of, that with fast foods, they could be using trans fats that could be wreaking havoc on your cholesterol system. Keep in mind as well that when we say saturated fats, even though it is classed as the bad fat, we look at foods as whole things. So don't look at butter and say, oh, that contains saturated fat, that's a bad food. It's not, because it contains micronutrients. Same with meat. Don't look at it and be like, oh, it has a lot of fat on it, I'm not going to have it, my cholesterol. You know, look at it like it contains a lot of micronutrients. Everything that's whole, natural, and unprocessed is not good or bad, because it contains so many different things and they all have a role in the body. All right, so myth busting with fat. How many people think that canola oil is bad for you? Yeah, you think so? Yeah, a couple of people here, yeah? Okay, so with canola oil, it's a really interesting one. It's because it's an unsaturated fat and it contains omega-3s, it's actually really kind of good for you. And the thing that's given it a real bad rap with inflammatory markers is the fact that when it's heated to extreme temperatures for a very long amount of time, such as, again, commercial deep frying, where they have the deep fryers boiling for like 8 or 9 hours, that's when the oil begins to oxidize, and that's when it contains inflammatory markers. So if you're an average person, using canola oil is not bad for you, so long as you're not having it bubbling over for 9 hours. Yeah, which is why olive oil and rapeseed oil is seen as such good cooking oils, because this oxidization at high temperatures for extreme amount of times doesn't happen. All right, so how much should you be eating? Basically, what this says, I know it's a lot of writing, basically what it says is that everyone's super individual, and that so long as you're having a healthy eating habit and intaking a range of food, that you shouldn't really be worrying. Like, so long as your main intake is coming from whole, natural, unprocessed foods, you shouldn't be worrying about it. However, I know that some people are into numbers. I'm a numbers girl myself. I like to know exactly how to do the right thing. So for your main meal of the day, so long as you focus on, half your plate being comprised of vegetables, and then a quarter of it being protein, and then the remaining 10% being those starchy foods such as potatoes and corn, and then 5% coming from fats, you will be totally fine. But if you, just focus on the whole unprocessed natural foods. If your goal is to lose weight or body fat, which I know a lot of people do have a goal of that, if you use this method of eating, you'll find it super easy to shred that weight, because the vegetables, you're eating so much of them and they're so nutrient dense but light in calories, you'll find it super easy to undereat your caloric intake because you will just be really full, especially if you eat your veggies and protein together and then like your corn and potatoes or whatever kind of last, and just eat them if you're not full, you know. So just keep in mind that that's a really good way of eating. So just summing all of that up, again, take a mental screenshot of this slide here. Carbohydrates are used for fuel. Focus on complex carbohydrates, but again, everything's a sliding scale. So foods are neither good nor bad, but if you can have whole, natural, unprocessed forms of carbohydrate, that's the best for your body. In terms of proteins, they're used for structure. They're chains of amino acids, and if you can focus on intaking complete protein sources from both animal, if you do eat animal products, and plant, that's awesome. And in terms of fat, they are fuel and structure, and focus on unsaturated will be the best for your cholesterol. In terms of micronutrients, there is roughly 40 micronutrients that you need in order to thrive as a human being. When we talk about micronutrients, we are talking about vitamins, minerals, and phytochemicals. So in terms of minerals, they are organic compounds which are super important for cellular functioning, development and growth, and assisting in the absorption of minerals. When we're talking about minerals, they are chemical elements which are super important for bone development, cardiovascular and nervous system functioning, and the production of hormones and enzymes. And then when we're talking about phytochemicals, they are only found in fruit and vegetables. But again, super important. They hold anti-inflammatory, microbial and antioxidant effects. We're not going to touch too heavily on phytochemicals today, but just be aware that they are contained in fruit and vegetables and they're awesome for you. All right, so touching on 6 of the most popular vitamins and minerals. We're going to be talking about vitamin D first off, super important in calcium absorption, bone growth, and immune function. And when I say top 2 food sources, these are not the only things that has this vitamin or mineral in it. It's just the top 2. So in terms of vitamin D, it's the flesh of fatty fish and fish liver oils. In terms of vitamin C, super important for the immune system and for tissue health. It's also an antioxidant. It's found in citrus fruits and bell peppers, also known as capsicum. In terms of vitamin K, this has a really important relationship with vitamin D and calcium in terms of your bone health. So it's also involved in blood clotting. It can also, some studies have shown that it may help reduce the risk of dementia and other mild cognitive impairments as well. So also really good for you. And it's predominantly found in green leafy vegetables such as spinach and kale. Kale's really gross though, so spinach is the preferred one. In terms of iron, super important for oxygen transport, DNA synthesis, and electron transport. I will touch on this though. A lot of people do take iron supplements. They have low energy, they have the symptoms of an iron deficiency, and so they think that they should supplement with iron. Because it's so readily available, you know, you can get it from your pharmacy without a prescription, you can get it from the supermarket. A lot of people do take iron supplements, but just be aware that any mineral or vitamin that you take where you're not actually in a clinical deficit will be bad for you. Like if you accidentally put yourself in an iron surplus, which is having too much iron in your body, basically look at it as if you're making your cells rust. It oxidizes your body and it is not good. It is not a good thing. So just keep in mind that if you are taking supplements, please do make sure that you need to take those supplements. Otherwise, they can be really bad for your body as they're having to metabolize so much of this thing, which can put so much stress on your systems. In terms of iron though, the top 2 food sources is shellfish and red meat. And the last 2, magnesium and calcium. The role of magnesium is essential for cellular and organ function, and deficiencies of magnesium have been associated with skeletal deformities, cardiovascular diseases, and metabolic syndrome. And again, top 2 food sources is leafy green vegetables, which vitamin K is found in as well, and legumes, which is your black beans, butter beans, lentils, all that kind of class of food, which is also a complex carbohydrate and also protein source. So good to incorporate in your meals. In terms of calcium, super important for structural integrity of bone, but also your proper cardiac functioning and also muscular contraction. Top 2 food sources is dairy products and spinach. So in terms of micronutrient myth busting, as we talked before, don't take it unless you are in a deficit and you know you're in a deficit. The best way to find out whether you are in a deficit is to just go to your doctor and say, hey, run the full panel on me, take my bloods, see what's happening. I want to know what I have to be taking or what I should be taking. And that's truly the only real way of knowing whether you should be taking supplements or not. I will just touch on that, with a daily multivitamin, the levels that are included in those capsules are so small that even if you didn't need them, and you took them for the rest of your life, they would never put you in such a big surplus. And if you do eat, let's say, a lot of spinach, let's say you have a lot of spinach, naturally you will find it really, really difficult to put yourself in a surplus by eating whole natural unprocessed foods, just because there's so many other micronutrients in them that your body finds them a lot easier to metabolize. So just summing it all up, whole natural unprocessed foods are the way to go. They contain a bunch of different things. They will always contain macronutrients and they will always contain micronutrients. A balanced diet is super important because it means that you're meeting all of those 40 micronutrient intake levels. And basically just summing it all up, having a natural unprocessed diet is the best for your health. So that's micronutrients. Moving on to water. As you can see, water is super important, but we never really think about it. 50 to 80% of the adult human body is water, and it is used for so many things. But yeah, we never really think about it. If we, for example, go into the office and have a really good, healthy lunch, we have all of our protein, we have all of our complex carbohydrates, we eat all the good things, and then it comes to 1 o'clock and we're having an absolute crash, we feel kind of like headachy, kind of sick, and we're in an air-conditioned environment, and you've had 3 coffees that day. Would you think to drink a glass of water, or would you leave that advice to your kids? You've got a headache, drink some water. So on average, after an 8-hour sleep, you will lose around 0.5 to 1 liter of water, which a lot of people don't realize. When you wake up, you are naturally in a water deficit already through your breathing and through your skin. You will have lost that overnight, especially if you're in an air-conditioned environment. So just general advice is straight off the bat, right after you wake up, just have a glass of water, take yourself out of that deficit. A lot of people also don't know that caffeine is a diuretic, which basically tells your kidneys to stop absorbing water. Same with alcohol. So caffeine and alcohol are both diuretics, which means that if you have 3 beers or 3 coffees or whatever, you will be peeing a lot more than you would otherwise, and be like, oh yeah, I do pee a lot when I drink. That's why, because it's telling your kidneys to stop absorbing water, which means that depending on how much coffee or whatever you are drinking, you could be actually dehydrating yourself. And just be aware that food and processed fluids, such as like soda or whatever, do require water for digestion. So if you are having a simple carbohydrate meal with a soda, you will be using quite a lot of fluid in your body to digest that. In terms of dehydration, if you have a consistently low water intake, you increase your chance of dying by everything by 20%, which is massive. And when you feel thirsty, you're already dehydrated. and as little as 2% loss in total body water can result in fatigue, emotional fluctuations, we've all been there, poor concentration, and impaired short memory. So yeah, if you get halfway through the day at work and you don't know why, you are super emotional, you can't concentrate, and your memory is just all over the wop, could be because you're actually dehydrated. So how much do you actually need? So in terms of a whole day, let's say you're not eating anything either. Let's say you are fasting for the day. If you're a male, you need 12 glasses of water. If you're a female, you need 9. 20% of our total water intake comes from food though, so that drops down to 9 glasses for males and roughly 6 glasses for females that we need to drink even if we are eating. In a 2007 study conducted by the National Cancer Institute of roughly 3,000 Americans, it was concluded that approximately 75% of them were in a chronically dehydrated state. Imagine how impacted you would be on a daily basis, just thinking about how, the impacts of that dehydration. All right, so 6 easy tips to ensure you're always hydrated. Upon waking, have a glass of water. It means that if you have that water then instead of, 10 o'clock in the morning, it means that you're already starting to climb out of that deficit. Whereas if you wait until 10 o'clock, you are dehydrated until 10 o'clock or when your body absorbs that water. Keep a water bottle with you, super easy. If you hate the flavor of water, because a lot of people do, most people who I talk to who don't drink water, they're like, nah, I don't like water, it's gross. Just flavor it. Even if you don't have fruit or herbs or anything available, you can artificially flavor it, and that is totally fine because the impact your body will have on it from the artificial flavoring in relation to the dehydration is far more significant. Aim to consume 1 glass of water per hour while at work, super easy, and then just incorporate water-rich foods into your diet, such as fruit and vegetables. So I think it's iceberg lettuce and capsicum are like 90% water, so that's a really easy way to just increase your water intake as well. All right, so summing all of that insane information up into some practical tips that you guys can take away with you. Prioritize a just eat real food diet. Whenever you're building your plate, whether it be for dinner or whether it be for lunch, focus on your vegetables. Focus on whole, natural, unprocessed foods. Talking about frozen vegetables, there's a myth around the fact that, oh, it's frozen, it has less nutrients in it. That's not true. If anything, it will have more nutrients in it because it hasn't been sitting there for like a week, So as soon as it's picked, it's frozen, so it will actually have more. Master the art of one pot wonders. So I know for myself, I actually hate cooking every evening. I hate it. I get home from a long day and I do not want to cook. I do not want to think about what I have to eat. I do not want to potentially have to go out and buy food. I don't want to invest like a minimum of half an hour cooking and then doing the dishes. It's just not for me. So I actually cook once a week. I cook on Sundays and I will make, think of your favorite dish and then just make it bigger. And just make it like a lot of vegetables. Super easy, like even traditional meals like nachos and butter chicken that doesn't often have vegetables. I make a massive pot of that, heaps of vegetables, some chicken, heaps of legumes, so like black beans, butter beans, kidney beans, lentils, a lot of protein in there, and then I serve that on just a bed of quinoa, which is a complete protein source as well, but also a complex carbohydrate. So that's a very well-balanced meal, super easy to do, especially if you buy the butter chicken in the Waddies cans like I do. Super quick, super easy, you just chuck it in, let it simmer for like 15 minutes, you're done for the week. And it's also a lot cheaper being able to do it like that way, especially if you're using frozen vegetables, which honestly, I just dump a kg in that pot and we're good. So just summing it all up, everything that we've talked about, macronutrients, protein, carbohydrates, and fats. Protein is structure, and we want to focus on the complete sources. Fats is structure and fuel, and we want to focus on unsaturated. Carbohydrates is simple and complex, and we want to focus on complex sources. In terms of micronutrients, they are in all things. even saturated fat sources. So just keep that in mind and focus on your fruit and vegetables. In terms of hydration, do make an effort to make sure that you're hydrated because it has such a massive impact on your health. So 9 to 12 glasses for men and 6 to 9 glasses for females. Oh, and then in terms of practical tips, just eat real food, make a real effort. Do understand, and I think this is probably the biggest thing of all, do understand that if you have a goal and you know what is in your food, such as, oh, I know that that's simple carbohydrate, I know that's saturated fat, or whatever it happens to be, know that simple carbohydrates are a form of fuel. So if you are not going to use that fuel in physical activity right after you eat it, it will likely be stored as fat. So just keep that in mind, and I think ultimately that's what these talks are about, like making it so that there's informed consent in what we're eating. Like rather than classing food as good and bad, we can say, oh yeah, that food contains that thing, which is in alignment with my goals or not in alignment with my goals, you know? So just increasing that education. All right, so key takeaways is that, yeah, as I mentioned, don't class food as good or bad. It's not useful for anybody. And if I were to say, oh, we can never have cake, no one in this room can ever have cake again, and you came in for a session with me and I found out that you had cake and I growled you for it, all that, like, you're not gonna never eat cake again, right? For the rest of your life. You're gonna eat it, but you're just gonna associate eating it with guilt and shame and feeling overwhelmed. Like, it's not functional, sustainable, or helpful at all. So demonizing foods and classing them as good and bad isn't helpful for anybody. We have to eat for our entire lives. Like, why not make it a sustainable and happy, healthy approach, right? Oh, here comes the sale pitch. You guys know what was coming. So in terms of what the sports nutritionist can offer you, we have got a 6-week exercise program. We've got a 6-week nutrition program, 12-week nutrition program, and a 6-month nutrition program. The reason our programs stand out from what everybody else offers is because it's completely customizable. So let's say you got 3 weeks into your program, and even though everything had been going fine up until week 3, you turned around and said to me, I hate everything about this program. I want to change everything. I'd say, yeah, no, that's all good, no worries. So completely customizable. The amount of support you get throughout the programs, we touch base with you every single week, whether it's a 15-minute video that I send through in reply to a form, or whether it's a half-hour face-to-face. The amount of support you get, there's also unlimited email and social media support, so the amount of support you get is insane. And also there is a massive, massive foundational pillar of education in all of these programs. As I mentioned, that's basically just saying everything I just said. In terms of our body composition analysis, as I mentioned, no one else does what we do. We look at 8 different sectors. With this one here, it goes a lot deeper than just that. It looks at your muscle mass, your fat mass, it looks at your bone mineral content, it looks at your skeletal muscle mass, it looks at quite a few things as well. But yeah, no one really does what we do. We look at metabolic health markers where no one else does. Like for your blood glucose and blood ketone levels, you couldn't really get those tested unless you went to your doctors. And with the blood ketone levels, they're really useful for picking up, like if your levels are elevated, they will pick up whether you are at risk for like fatty liver disease. So really useful. With this assessment, it's built for everybody. Every single person, whether you have a goal of, just losing weight or putting on muscle mass, whether you're a beginner, whether you're an athlete, or whether you're just a health-conscious individual, is built for everyone. Every single person can get something out of doing this assessment, whether they do it regularly or once a year, once every 6 months, So that's what we will be doing tomorrow and Tuesday at Snap Fitness. If you guys are keen to book in, come see me after the chat and we can have a chat about it and get you booked in. But that's the end of the presentation. Thank you very much for your time. Do you have any questions for me? Yep.